Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the new Character Matters program. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we've been in for some time now, and that affects so many aspects of our lives, indeed, all aspects of our lives, and what we can do about this situation and maybe turn things around. And in the past few programs, I've been giving kind of a sneak preview, in a way, of my upcoming book, Essentials for the Journey, Embracing and Living Out the 10 Commandments of Character, as I call them, that I briefly introduced in my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. This is the book that explains the wide variety of character disturbances, from narcissistic personalities to sociopaths to psychopaths. They're all in there. It explains the character disturbance spectrum, how broad it is, and how difficult it is in our day and time to simply pigeonhole or discretely categorize different personality and character disturbances. And it also explains why traditional means of intervention don't help and cause many folks who seek help by traditional means to experience what we call therapy-induced trauma, whereby they go to get the help and they end up feeling worse for the effort. Now, in today's program, we're going to be continuing a discussion of the fourth commandment that has to do with revering truth. We've already covered the first three that have to do basically with finding a sense of self that is well-balanced, that is psychologically well-balanced, overcoming our natural tendency toward egocentricity and seeing the bigger picture and wanting to do our part to be a wholesome part of that bigger picture, and then overcoming any sense of entitlement and developing a profound appreciation for this magnificent gift of life. And then lastly, the third commandment related to developing a positive and healthy sense of self, coming to a balanced sense of self-worth. But the fourth commandment is a pivotal one, because respect for the truth, properly even discerning what the truth is, and then reckoning with it in a faithful way, is pivotal to our character development. We don't merely deceive others when we're trying to manipulate or we're trying to impression manage or we're trying to get something we want or avoid something we don't want. But we're also incredible deceivers of ourselves. We kid ourselves about a lot of things. And for a long time, traditional notions prevalent in psychology had us believing certain things about why we deceive ourselves and why we deceive others. A lot of those assumptions are proving to be incorrect. But regardless of how you look at the issue of proper regard for the truth and the reasons why we have such difficulty with that, perhaps nothing is as important to our character development as truly discerning the truth about ourselves, about one another, and making a commitment to honestly reckon, not only with others, but especially with ourselves. Now, the researchers will tell you, I think I may have mentioned this last week, the researchers will tell you that there are 20 some reasons why we lie. When you boil them all down, it comes down to two basic things. We lie to avoid something we find distasteful or unpleasant or painful, some consequence we don't want to experience, or something we don't want to happen. So we lie as a means of avoiding the unpleasant. And then the other reason that we lie is to get something that we find desirable, but we don't think we can secure as easily or as surely if we're straight up about it. So those are the two reasons we lie. It's easy to see how those reasons affect why we lie to others. But it's not so easy to see how those same two reasons apply to why we lie to ourselves. You know, the task of character development, the work that it takes. And by the way, I'm going to emphasize this in several programs coming up. The work that it takes is really what defines love. I've written about this several times in numerous articles on my blog at drgeorgesimon.com. You can find several articles at www.drgeorgesimon.com on this very topic. It's kind of ironic in a way that both love and work are four-letter words, and we have a kind of connotation that we give to certain four-letter words. And it's interesting how persons of disturbed or disordered character regard both love and work. They regard them like the four-letter words that we often describe as the most distasteful or the most banal, crude, undesirable words in the language. Disturbed characters have a regard for both love and work that is not just unhealthy. It's more than unhealthy. It helps define what's really wrong or problematic with their character. But love, inherently, true love, I'm not talking about sentiment. I'm not talking about mere attraction. I'm talking about the genuine behavior of love. It requires a certain kind of work, a certain kind of labor. And that's true whether the work is for our own benefit or for the benefit of others. You know, we can't really love others very well until we know how to love ourselves well. We have to understand what love is in order to be able to do it well with someone else. And love inherently implies work. Labor. It's not easy to love, not to truly love. It's easy to have sentiments. They just come and go. It's easy to find yourself attractive. It's easy to find yourself attracted. You don't have to do anything for that. But genuine loving, the kind of loving that we're actually commanded to do within certain faith traditions, is a behavior. And a difficult one at that. One wouldn't have to command a sentiment or a feeling that comes easily, especially under the right circumstances. No, one only has to command a behavior that is inherently not easy, and to love ourselves appropriately, to love ourselves well. We have to know ourselves, the good and bad and the ugly parts, without reservation and without deception. But we human beings are great deceivers. We know how to impression manage others by putting on faces, by styling ourselves in certain ways that can be convincing, while still hiding our true stripes. I wrote a whole book about that. In sheep's clothing, understanding and dealing with the most manipulative people that you'll encounter in your life. Kind that know how to look good without being good. Kind that are even capable of making positive impressions all over the place, but have serious flaws in their character and use certain tactics to get the better of you and impression manage you at the same time. And we'll talk about all of those in detail in a future program. But in today's program, I want to focus primarily on the importance of honest self-reckoning. Because to truly love ourselves well, we have to be square with ourselves. We have to know what we're really all about, where our strengths and weaknesses really lie. And here's the real crux of it. We have to be willing to do the work that it takes to be a better person. This whole process of character formation, character development is just that. It's a process. And it's a process that we used to hold in such high regard. We used to hold character in such high regard. It had a position of such prominence within our culture that we devoted a lot of time and energy to the character formation of individuals. Yes, it was important to develop our talents and skills. Yes, it was important to have the drive to get ahead, to succeed. But it was also of preeminent importance that you be a person of integrity. And so everyone, from our neighbors, parents, teachers, even officials in government, everyone participated in the task of helping ensure that we were decent people. Character mattered. It mattered to a business person looking for some help with a business enterprise, trying to grow that enterprise, trying to provide livelihoods for individuals involved in that enterprise. Character mattered more than anything else. And with individuals of good character populating a company, the company itself developed a certain character. And that helped build genuine prosperity, providing livelihoods and a future. A positive reputation meant a lot, more than even the profits, which naturally come with good character. There are always benefits. Trouble always ensues when profits or personal gain or any kind of gain is put ahead of character. Because eventually, any human enterprise not founded in good character will fall apart, which is why so many relationships, especially so many marriages, fall apart. The statistics are mind-numbing. They're undeniable, even though we still choose to deny them. Character is the glue that holds all these enterprises together and makes these enterprises work, brings prosperity to the endeavor, wholesomeness. And perhaps nothing is as pivotal as a positive regard for the truth, for it has the power truly to set you free, to release you from the chains that keep us from being all that we can be, and from enjoying all that life really can bring us. Problem is, it's much easier to cheat, to lie, and to deceive than it is to truly love, which inherently demands work. We can't really love ourselves very well unless we're willing to work, seriously work, on the development of our own character. And we can't love another human being unless we're willing to do the labors of love that it takes to develop, nurture, and sustain a relationship, to deepen it, to deepen the regard that two people have for one another. Everything hinges on character. And without a proper regard for the truth, we can't grow. It's much easier to just engage in wishful thinking about things. The mark of the disturbed character, in the words of one of the great researchers, is that thinking makes it so in their own minds. It's much easier to just insist in your own mind that something is so, even though a part of you knows darn well you're kidding yourself, you're lying. And when I talk about that kind of self-deception, I'm not talking about the true psychological unconscious defense mechanism of denial either. Most of the time, even professionals use that label, denial, inappropriately when they're referring to all the kinds of lies people tell themselves about what they're doing that they know at some level is no good for them, but one have an excuse for anyway. That's not the psychological unconscious defense mechanism of lying. It's just a stubborn, impaired character's refusal to reckon honestly with the truth about their situation, about themselves, about where they are on their road to some decent moral development. Perhaps nothing is as important to growing in character is having the willingness, at least, the willingness to take an honest look at things, including the state of one's character health. One of the founders of AA talked about willingness and it being the linchpin in the whole equation of personal recovery. In these steps that folks take to free themselves of the grip of their addiction and to grow themselves in character, without the willingness to take these steps, the mindful willingness on a day by day, 24 hours a day, every hour of every day, every minute of every hour, willingness, there's no recovery. It all hinges on that willingness. And if we make the decision in our hearts to get really square with ourselves, about ourselves, and with each other, about each other. One heart at a time, this world will be transformed. But if we don't get really honest with ourselves, about ourselves, and with each other, about each other, if we don't stop our pompous self-aggrandizing, our hideous wishful thinking, and come to terms with what's real, if we don't do that and do it soon, we're going to experience even more of the pain and chaos that we've been experiencing for so many decades now. This character crisis did not come upon us overnight. As more and more and more character impaired individuals entered the society, our social institutions that were designed to actually foster character development became corrupted. And as those institutions became more corrupted, it only fostered more and more and more character dysfunction in our society. A classic vicious cycle. And it occurred over many decades. So now we find ourselves in a place where we can't close a deal on a handshake confidently, where we can't trust that an intimate relationship will last, that we can't even trust that a person promising to love us forever will even be faithful to one aspect of that promise. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take a long time to move forward, which is why I've spent my professional career studying this problem and writing about it. And I hope that you will avail yourself of some of those resources. All four of my books touch upon the subject in some way. In Sheep's Clothing became an international bestseller largely because it was the first to describe what folks currently call the gaslighting effect. That feeling of being crazy when you just know intuitively that there's something not quite right in character about somebody you've been dealing with, or maybe your relationship partner, but you can't put your finger on it and you can't objectively verify it. And on top of that, they engage in certain tactics and behavior that make you think you're the crazy person for even thinking there's something wrong. And I explain how those tactics work, why they work, how to recognize them, how to properly respond to them so you can empower yourself. And then my book, Character Disturbance, lays out the broad spectrum of character dysfunction that so plagues our society and is responsible for so many of our psychological problems. We're too invested in giving people pills and other quick fixes. In many cases, I'm not saying that there aren't illnesses that don't have a strictly biological origin. There are. But so many times, the problems that individuals experience are direct outgrowth of their stunted character growth. And so when we just simply take away some of the symptoms that they're experiencing or ameliorate some of the symptoms that they're experiencing, they don't really have enough pain or motivation to take a serious look at what's really wrong, what really needs to change. So we don't help them. But character disturbance lays it all out there. including what you need to do to find the right kind of help. And then my book, The Judas Syndrome, and lastly, my book, How Did We End Up Here, with Dr. Kathy Armistead, the guide to surviving and thriving in this character-disturbed world of ours. How to pick up the pieces, how to move on empowered and less likely to succumb to the same pitfalls. And then my blog, there'll be another article today, partly on this very topic. And we're going to stay on this topic, this fourth commandment, the absolute paramount importance of the truth. And in next week's program, we're going to be talking about all of those ways, all of the very specific ways that we deceive, and what it gets us in the short term, the reasons we really do it, and what it costs us in the long term, character-wise, not only for our personal welfare, but also what it costs our relationships and what it costs society as a whole, because we've become so dishonest, because we've become so used to cheating, because nothing outrages us anymore when we see people basically inventing truths to serve their own needs, perpetuating falsehoods knowingly. It's always destructive. The evil is always in the lie. It's always in the lie. We'll talk about that at the end of this series of programs that we're going to have on this very pivotal fourth commandment of character development that I'll be talking about for some time. And I'm glad you tuned in for another edition of the New Character Matters. I hope you'll tune in again. And I hope you'll submit some questions that you want me to cover on this topic, because it's a big one. And I'm going to be, as I said, writing about it too in several articles on the blog. So you can go to the Contact Dr. Simon page on the blog at www.drgeorgesimon.com and send me a note. Say you'd like me to address a certain issue, or maybe you just have a question of what we've been talking about here, about what we've been talking about here, and I'll be happy to address it. I'll also have an announcement next week about the next live broadcast, which will be either a YouTube live or a Zoom event. And I'll have information for you, as I said, next week about that. So once again, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. George Simon. I'll see you again next time on another edition of the New Character Matters. Take care.